speaker. Also, you're a high performance coach, but you were not born like that. You've gone through many amazing stories in your life, which like have them ingrained them, and then you're out there in the world serving through your experiences as well as your knowledge. So please tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me onto this Zoom call, Elise. I really appreciate it. And hello to everybody who's watching, and anybody who's watching the recording too. And I'm South African by birth. My ancestors are Dutch, so my lineage is Dutch. I've got a Dutch surname, and but I grew up in South Africa, and grew up on the east coast of South Africa in a place called Durban. And Durban is famous for good waves, beautiful people, warm weather, amazing weather all year round. And
Wow.
I came to live in London in 1990. I've been living in London on and off for 30 years. I've lived in America, I've lived in Moscow, I've lived in Austria. I've also lived in South Africa during that time. I went back to South Africa for 7 years between the November 2001 and August 2008. So I had it's been interesting. I love traveling, and I spend most of my time, on a stage in front of an audience. How long has it been now? It's been it's about, nearly 3 months now. About more than 2 months now. I've been obviously, doing webinars.
From stage, yeah.
Yeah, doing webinars and Zoom calls. And just like you said, I've gone from one webinar to another webinar to another one, doing Zoom calls, lots of interviews I've been invited to do, and podcasts. And, I was just talking about this on the webinar that I was on before I came to join you now.
Oh.
I was telling the same thing. I was saying, my business went upside down when all the events were cancelled and travel were cancelled. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I thought, I can do some filming, things that I'm wanting to be doing that I haven't had time to do. So I've done some filming, and I thought, well, I could do some webinars. I could do some stuff online. I could do a lot of lives, And I thought, well, I can still coach. I've still got coaching clients, and some of those clients, even though I can't see them, I can still coach them online.
Absolutely.
And the benefit of technology, right? The benefit of Zoom and Facebook and, and all these great pieces of technology that we can connect with people all around the world, in different time zones, just sitting in the comfort of our own home.
Absolutely.
And so, I've been able to connect with people from 65, 70 countries in the last several weeks, people that I would never have met had I been on the road, right? I would have never met those people. So I'm very, very blessed to be able to still connect with people doing what I'm doing, from the comfort of home. You said, tell people a little bit about what I do. I teach people around.
Before you start that,
Yes.
because this is something I really want to share about you. Because so far, what you have shared, not many people that are going through this process can see this. Like, you are looking at things with gratitude, even though there are the most challenging times, not only personal health-wise, but also for business too. You're always someone that's looking for opportunities. You're always someone that looks like, okay, what's good in this? And this is a mindset. And not
Yes.
many people, I think I, and many of the speakers and coaches, we've been trained for these days. And so this is what I was going to tell you. What do you do? Please tell us. I know that you're a high performance coach, but also please do tell us about your mindset too.
Oh, sure. It's funny. I've been watching this amazing documentary on Netflix, and I'm sure most people on this call, if not everybody, knows what Netflix is. And there's this amazing documentary called The Last Dance. The Last Dance. And it's Michael Jordan. It's about Michael Jordan's last season at the Bulls. And, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, probably the greatest athlete of all time.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing documentary. And what it does is it gets you behind the scenes. And for the last season of Michael Jordan's career at the Bulls, there was a camera crew that followed them for the whole season. And the documentary is outstanding. I mean, it's like excellent. Like, it's a must watch. Okay. And what it does is it gets you inside the head of Michael Jordan, right? And you see what this, who this man was when he was a boy, how his whole life and his career unfolded, the impact that his father had on him. And really it's blown my mind because, I've always loved Michael Jordan. I played basketball when I was a young boy, but I never really got I never really got inside his head like you can with this documentary. And he's somebody who his father taught him always turn a negative into a positive, no matter what it is. And you know, I realized that just like you say, that's something that I do too, right? But it's through training, and practice. It's not easy, you know. It's definitely not easy. And in the beginning, it's always very hard because we are so accustomed and so conditioned and so well trained by the environment that we're in to always look for the easy route, right? The easiest route, the safest route. And the brain and the mind is designed to keep us safe. And as human beings, we're addicted to safety. We're addicted to feeling secure. And so it's not easy to always look for the good in everything, right? The good, especially in the toughest challenges that we're facing, especially in heartbreak or tragic circumstances or even traumatic circumstances. However, if you can build that muscle and you can make it a discipline and you can really become consistent with it, it changes everything. Because then what happens is it just becomes your normal default, right? It becomes your identity, you know, where you just always automatically find the good in every situation. And then, you know, if you're using an internal narrative, or if you have a very powerful way of talking to yourself, a very conscious conversation with yourself on a daily basis, and you're asking powerful questions, then you can always find the gift in no matter what is happening. And you can always turn your worst day into your best day.
Absolutely. Wow, I love that. Worst day into your birthday. I love that.
Or into your birthday, yeah. Or into your birthday. I like that. I didn't say birthday, but I like that.
That's a cool creation. Yay!
I like that. Your worst day into your birthday. I love it. I said your best day, but your birthday works even better.
Oh,
Well, you know, it reminds me what you said. It reminds me about Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why.
Why, exactly. But Allan, tell us, please, have you always been like this? Like,
no.
Yes, tell us that part, because many of them are not there yet, you know? Let's start a little bit from there.
Yeah, and thank you for asking me that question, because, you know, whenever I stand on a stage in front of an audience, and I've been speaking 20 years now, I've spoken in many different countries, and, you know, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, you know, America, Africa, you know, up and down the UK. And, you know, I always say to people, you know, when you see somebody who's demonstrating, you know, a certain level of life where it looks like their life is working, you know, and they look like they're in a great state, they're happy, you know, they focus, they're successful. We must always remember that they weren't born like that, you know, and often, you know, when people have learned to create a certain expression of life, they put a lot of work into that, you know. There's a lot of work goes into, you know, being successful. A lot of work goes into building a business. A lot of work goes into being healthy and fit. A lot of work goes into having a peaceful mindset, or a happy mindset, or an optimistic mindset. A lot of work goes into that. And all of us, whether we like it or not, all of us have to learn to make peace with our mind. We have to learn to manage our mind. We have to learn to make peace with our own demons. We have to realize that we are all unconscious 95% of the time. And we need to learn how to become conscious. And that is something that takes a lot of work. Henry Ford, you know, the great car manufacturer, he said a long time ago, he said that thinking, conscious, critical thinking, not critical from the criticism, but critical meaning, you know, real important thinking, critical, looking at the critical elements of success. He said that conscious, critical thinking is the hardest work there is. That's why so few people engage in it, because it's tiring. It's hard work, right? Because you got to pay attention, and a lot of energy goes into it. But when you can build the muscle, then it changes everything. So to answer your question, no, I wasn't always like this. You know, I grew up in a very tough neighborhood in South Africa. I grew up in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the country, definitely the toughest neighborhood in my city. I grew up right next door to a police station for the first 6 years of my life. So when I was 4 years of age, I remember climbing on the wall and looking over the wall into the police yard next door. I couldn't see a lot, but I could see enough. And what I saw was terrifying. I saw black men getting beaten to death by white policemen with sticks. That made me feel very, very unsafe. And you know that one of the human needs is security and certainty. We need to feel safe in our environments, and we get certainty from lots of different things, you know, from careers, from jobs, from relationships, from money, from owning things. And I felt very unsafe as a young boy in that environment, because as a young boy, you know, we look at men in uniform, policemen, soldiers, firemen, anyone in a uniform. For a little boy looking at a man in uniform represents, it represents safety. It represents, certainty, because all little boys want to be a man in a uniform when they see somebody in uniform when you're small, right? And I certainly wanted to be. However, when I saw that experience, I never told anybody about it. I kept it to myself, but it did terrify me, made me feel very unsafe. And then right through my youth, as a teenager, as a young boy, I was bullied severely. I was teased consistently. I went to 2 Catholic schools. I had religious dogma shoved in my head from a young age of 4 years of age. And then, when I finished school, I wasn't academically minded, so I didn't do very well at school. My parents never let me forget how much my education cost them, because it was private schooling. It was very expensive, but I didn't do well, so they were dismayed and disappointed that I wasn't going to get into university. And but then when I finished school, the only option, I had to go to the military because it was compulsory. And so I went into the military, and I spent 2 years in the military, and I was trained in different disciplines, and I was trained to use a patrol mortar pipe, which is a 60 millimeter mortar pipe, 60 millimeter mortars, probably about this big. And then an RPG-7 rocket launcher, which is one of those tubes you put on your shoulder with a sight, and it's got a trigger, and you fire a rocket-propelled grenade into a building or a vehicle. You've seen them in the movies, you've seen them in war movies. It's a very popular weapon in war movies. That was my weapon, So I never ever thought that I would have to use that weapon in real life against other people. I enjoyed using it in mock operations. I enjoyed the fact that I was very, very good at dropping a 60 millimeter mortar inside a tank. 9 times out of 10, I was so good. I was very good with the RPG. I could put the RPG. I could hit the bullseye of any target, and it was enjoyable doing that in a mock operation. Because it wasn't the real thing. But in 1987, we were suddenly told that we were going to Angola, and we had to sign a document. That was a document that was compelling us to not to talk about it and not to tell anyone about it. It was a document that we had to sign declaring secrecy. We were forbidden to talk about it because it was illegal. South Africa wasn't allowed to be in Angola in 1987. South Africa was in Angola for a long time, but it was only in 1991 that it came out on the international press, and everyone suddenly discovered that South Africa had been in Angola illegally, because the Geneva Convention said we were not allowed to be there. But we had been there for many years. And there was a civil war in Angola. It was one of the bloodiest wars in Africa. It's widely known as one of the bloodiest wars in Africa.
Yeah.
Went on for years, many, many years, and millions of people lost their lives. And I was sent there in 1987 for 7 months, and I was in combat, in close combat, in open combat, and fighting against Russians and Cubans, and MiG-27 jets dropping bombs, Russian tanks, and dropping mortars on the enemy and firing RPG-7 rockets into enemy vehicles, and it was very intense, and lost a lot of my friends killed around me. And when I came out of that 7 months later, I was traumatized by that experience. It was very intense.
Of course, after that, you were in war, like literally. That psychologically, I can relate with that. I've gone through that post-trauma as well, so I can relate. It is something real. It is not just like the things that we read in books. Even though if you would know a lot of psychology, still it pulls you down, even in your dreams, right?
Of course.
So coming out of that uncertainty and war, that means you have a lot of goods to share there.
Looking back, yes, I'm very grateful for that experience, because it's allowed me to become who I am now. It led me, everything. I believe everything happens for a reason. And looking back, I can connect the dots, right? But at the time, when I came home, I was now suddenly at home. It was quiet. I was in my bedroom. But it was so noisy inside my head, and every time I closed my eyes, I could just see the flashing images, of what I'd seen and what I'd done. I felt very guilty and very ashamed. I was drinking every single day. I'd already started smoking marijuana at the age of 14, and by the time I came out of the army, I was smoking marijuana every day. I was drinking all day long, and I was drinking myself to sleep every day, because I was having nightmares every night. I had nightmares for 7 years. I was very
couldn't
angry.
cope with your emotions, right? Like there's so much emotions coming up, and you just don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Trying to process the experience, you know. And and I started taking LSD, I started taking acid, and which was very, very intense because I was having hallucinogenic experiences. I wasn't sure if I was awake or you know, was asleep, and it was a really crazy time. I was very, very volatile in my emotions. I was very depressed, and then suddenly I was very hyper. I was very angry. I was confrontational. So what I did was I locked myself in my bedroom for 6 months. I didn't go out in public. I felt very uncomfortable in public, so I just stayed at home. And I drank myself to sleep every day for 6 months. I continued drinking after that for 15 years. Continued taking drugs for 15 years. I was a drug addict by the time I got to 1999. I was in a bad way. I had been a drug addict for the whole of the 90s, getting high every day. But in 1988, thankfully, you know, 7 months after I came out of the military, I bumped into a good friend of mine, and he was the one who introduced me to personal development and psychology. And he said, you know, he was also in the same military operation as me. He was in a helicopter, Renee, just like you, my friend. He was flying into Angola and landing in the middle of the war zone, and then taking the dead and the wounded back to the military hospital, and then coming back again. And that's what he was doing. And when he discovered that I was on the front line of the same operation, I remember his face. He said, "Oh my God," he said, "man, how did you survive that?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "Well, you must have survived for a reason." And he said, "Come to my place." And we went up to his place. He had a flat near my parents, where I lived with my parents. And we sat in his flat for, you know, I think we sat there for 12, 15 hours, nonstop, just talking. And he introduced me to, you know, the idea of psychology. I'd never heard about psychology before. I'd never even thought about, you know, the mind. I never ever thought about anything before until he said to me, "Listen, you have a mind, and now you are processing this experience." And he said, if you don't process it effectively, it's going to drive you down, you know, into despair. And he said, you know, veterans commit suicide every day because of the fact that they cannot process what they've been through, and they can't tell anybody about it because they feel ashamed and they feel guilty. And I said, well, I've been sworn to secrecy, so I can't tell anyone about it. And so then he said to me, the best way to learn how to process information, especially traumatic experiences, is to read inspirational literature. And I'm going to give you a book to read. And then he put in my hand, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. And I was 21 years of age. It was July of 1988. And that was a day that you know, really my thirst for knowledge, you know, was triggered. And I became a student that day. You know, I began to read the book. I looked at the back cover, I read the book, and I said, this sounds very interesting. He said, you're going to love this book. It's fascinating. And he said, you can read any of these books here. You know, you can come hang out here. And we actually started our first business together, and he became my library. He was actually, I consider him one of my earth angels, actually. And he was killed, unfortunately, in a motor accident several years later. But I still feel his presence often. He's a beautiful man, Malcolm. Wow. But he was one of my earth angels because he was the one who put me on the path I'm on now. You know, he introduced me to psychology, to emotional mastery, emotional intelligence, communication, mind. You know, so I read all the books he had over the next 18 months. And then in 1990, I jumped on an aeroplane. I arrived in London with about 800 pounds in my pocket, a backpack on my back. And, you know, I went looking for a job. I moved into an Airbnb, we didn't have Airbnb, sorry, then a B&B, a bed and breakfast in Kensington, yeah. In Kensington near Ladbroke Grove, Portobello Road, some people know. And I went looking for a job, and I found the first job pushing a broom, mixing cement, carrying bricks. I loved it. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew about my past. I fell in love with London. And the first thing I did when I arrived in London is I went looking for a book, because now I was a student, right? I'd read. By the time I arrived in London, over the previous 18 months, from July of 88, when I started reading Think and Grow Rich, to March of 1990, I'd read already probably 75, 100 books. And, you know, and, you know, Mind Power, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, Byron Katie, Zig Ziglar, Jim, you know, Les Brown, you know, Tom Hopkins on sales, Bob Proctor. And I was you know, Brian Tracy. I was listening to cassettes. And when I arrived in London, I went looking for a book. And the first book that I picked up in London was Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins in Victoria Station. I remember that day, 1990, March 1990. I was only in London for 2 weeks. And I walked into a bookshop and I picked that book up. It said Unlimited Power, Anthony Robbins. And I turned the book over. It was a thick book like this. And I looked at the back cover, and there was a picture of Tony with big white teeth. And he had He had these braces, right? These yellow braces with a yellow tie and a side parting, you know, with his hair. It was perfectly combed. And it said Anthony Robbins. And he looked so young, right? I remember thinking, this guy looks so young. And he was 26 at that time when he wrote that book, 26 years of age. And I remember I read the back cover of the book and I said, Anthony Robbins, America's #1 peak performance coach, a master of neuro-linguistic programming. And I remember thinking, what? Neuro-linguistic programming? This sounds interesting. I'm going to buy this book. And I put it under my arm and I was looking and I saw some cassette tapes hanging on a rack. And I bought 2 cassette tapes that day, also read by Tony Robbins, Giant Steps and Awaken the Giant Within. And I began to listen to Tony on cassette tape. And then right through the 90s, I listened to Tony on cassette tape. And I bought all of his other books as they came out, Awaken the Giant Within, Notes from a Friend. And then in 1999, I was working in Credit Suisse in the bank in Canary Wharf. I was making £25 an hour, but I hated my life. I hated the person I saw in the mirror. My head was full of knowledge. I had so many books inside my head, workshops inside my head. I've been to many workshops, many talks. I did landmark education. I did landmark forum, advanced course, self-expression and leadership program, communication 1, communication 2. I did the leadership. I did the forum leaders program. I was going to be the forum leader for South Africa, for landmark. But I was still so unhappy, and I was a drug addict, and I was homeless, and I was broke, and I was suicidal, and I was thinking about committing suicide every day. I just hated life. I was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 84 hours a week. I wasn't sleeping well. I was going out, you know, every Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and often on a Thursday night, not sleeping, getting high all day. I was working in a very high, stressful environment in the bank, working in the server room, looking after all the servers, all the trades that were going through the servers, $15 billion of trades going through the servers every day. And I was so stressed and just hating life. And then one day I opened the paper, I saw an advert for Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within, Cardiff, Wales, July of 1999. And so I borrowed money to buy a ticket, and I went to UPW. And at UPW, I had an intervention with Tony on the 3rd day. And
you did? I didn't know this.
Yeah, on day 3,
wow.
after the Dickens process, because those days, the Tony's workshops were very small. There was only about 1,400, 1,500 people max.
Oh, wow.
And Tony used to take shares after the Dickens. He used to take shares. And so I don't know how it happened, but I got the microphone and I was talking to Tony. I was standing right at the back where I sat at the back all weekend, right at the back on the right-hand side of the room. But I remember I had the microphone. I was talking to Tony and the camera was on me and my face was on the screen. And I saw my face on the screen. I thought, oh my God, I look terrible. Because I was crying and snot coming out my nose. And I was telling Tony, I said, man, I love you so much. I've been listening to you for 9 years on cassette tape. I said, you've saved my life so many times. I said, this workshop has changed my life already. I said, this exercise we just did, this Dickens process, I said, I felt like, it feels like I put something down in this exercise for the first time in my life. I put something down.
Allan, I absolutely, I'm in the story. And at the same time, we have some viewers that have no idea about Tony Robbins and they might not know it. So let me a little bit just give in what you're sharing, because I can totally relate, and they heard a lot of good things about Tony from me in the past years. But so what happens is, as you can see, you now know the reason why I really wanted to invite Allan, because right after 15th of July in Turkey, when stage of coping happened, almost like a war zone, and right after that, 2 of my friends killed themselves. One of them, he did not have any life purpose. His mom was only the one, so he totally went on to drugs and he overdosed himself. Wow. And the second one was, he was super healthy. He was well-to-do. He would go to gym every day. Like when you would look, he had these nice tattoos and everything. He had a house, yacht, you know, like when you say like a dream life. But unfortunately, he really got into a very big debt after that 15th of July. What happened in Turkey, in both of them, they're not live anymore. And since then, I feel this part of me that wants to help wounded souls. And I know how Tony is powerful with that. Not only Tony, but you, Renee, and many other leaders that he is sporting out there in the world going out to help these people. So
Yes.
one of the reasons why I invited you here is exactly for this. And what Tony does is he has his 3.5 day, 4 day event, and on the third day there is this process called Dickens process, and it's super powerful. He takes you to your hell, and then he takes you to your heaven, I shall say, in a very nutshell. But he uses psychology. He uses like leverage so that you would change for better, for good. So that's what Allan was just sharing. And just like you heard from him, and I'm thinking about all these people out there after war, what happened in Turkey, also war in Syria and in Middle East, so many things. People are going through what you have gone through. And exactly that's what's happening. Everyone is drinking, on pills, smoking, getting high because they don't want to face the reality. Same thing with COVID-19. So many people right now, they're in this doom scenario saying like, oh my God, the world is going to end. So what? Oh my God, my business is going down. Now they're scared. So Tony has helped us. He helped us to create a mindset to get out of this, find certainty no matter what. Can you give us some little bit like tools what our listeners can do right now? Because COVID-19, even though we're coming out of it, people are still scared. They can't find much certainty.
Yeah, well, it's a very good point. Unfortunately, the media has really driven fear into the hearts of everyone around the world. And, you know, the fear virus has always been the worst virus in history. There's nothing worse than the fear virus. It's much, much worse than the coronavirus. You know, at the end of the day, what people need to realize is that what allows anything to affect you physically in terms of dis-ease is how well you manage your mind. Because when you manage your mind effectively and you build internal certainty, like Yali said about certainty, certainty is a muscle and you've got to build internal certainty. What does that mean? Well, the average person looks for certainty externally. They get certainty from money, from their job, from their career, from their relationship, from their friends, you know, from certain experiences from going to the gym, from maybe going to the church. And what happens is if you take any of those things away, which is what's happened right now with coronavirus, where people are now in lockdown, they can't go to the gym, they can't go to the church, they can't even go to funerals, they can't connect with their friends, they can't see their families, and now they're locked down on their own. So now suddenly they have a massive amount of uncertainty because all the vehicles that meet their need for certainty have been taken away. So if you haven't done that work on yourself, where you haven't built your internal certainty, now suddenly you're going to feel very anxious. And one of the most overriding things that I've been getting from my clients, from everybody that I've been serving online, from people who have been reaching out to me, right at the beginning of when this whole thing broke out, I put a short video out to my mailing list, just a 2-minute video saying, hey, listen, be careful. The only thing that you need to fear right now is fear itself. Because if you are in fear, if you are allowing what's going on around you to create fear in your body, then what's going to happen is your immune system is going to shut down immediately, because now your body is going to learn immediately when you're in fear, what happens is your brain perceives a threat. So this fear virus, the reason it's so dangerous, and fear is related to stress very, very closely. Now, the problem with this virus of fear is it's not external, it's internal. So you can't get away from it. It's always there inside of you. So you need to manage your internal narrative. What are you telling yourself? What are you focusing on? What are you making it mean? Because if you don't manage the fear virus inside your mind effectively, immediately it's going to have an impact on your body. Because now the brain decides, okay, I'm under threat. There's a threat. The brain cannot conceive that the threat is coming from inside, from the mind. It thinks the threat's coming from outside. So now it immediately starts to conserve energy, because the brain knows that the body must either run away or it's going to get into a fight. You have to defend yourself, or you run away, or the third option for most people is they freeze. They don't know what to do. They get debilitated and they get depressed and they just sit on the couch. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Or they watch TV, or they distract themselves with food, right? Or they're drinking, or they're taking drugs. So you have to manage your fear, manage how fear affects your body. And because your immune system is compromised instantaneously by fear. And then what happens is you stop breathing properly. As soon as you're in fear, you stop breathing properly. Now you start breathing in a very shallow fashion. So now you're getting less oxygen in your body. So that means you're being even more stressed. As soon as you feel fear, the front part of your brain closes down. You cannot reason. There's no logic anymore, because now there's less blood flow to the front of your brain. The blood flows to the back of your brain, where you can react from your reptilian brain, because you need to run away or you need to fight. So all of this now means that you cannot make proper decisions, right? When you're not thinking right, you're in reaction. And so people need to pay attention to the internal narrative, and they need to learn to build muscle, internal certainty. What is internal certainty? You get internal certainty from having faith in yourself, trusting life, trusting that everything is working out for you. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Trusting that wherever you are is exactly where you are supposed to be. You cannot be anywhere else, because that's where you are. So you might as well surrender to the moment. Also, surrendering to the current reality of your life. Don't argue with reality. You will always lose, right? Surrender to the reality of your life and understand exactly where you are, and then ask yourself a different question. What can I learn right now? How can I turn this around? How can I turn this into an opportunity? What is life teaching me right now? At the very first interview that I did, right, when this whole thing broke about, 9 weeks ago, right? And I was invited to do a live interview with someone, and it was streamed out across social media. And so they said to me, they asked me the question. So Allan, what do you think about this coronavirus? And the very first thing I said, this thing is by divine design.
Yes.
And they said, well, what do you mean by that? So I said, nothing happens by accident. And I said that we have created this coronavirus, mankind. We have planted the seeds of this, what we are seeing right now, a long time ago. We are now reaping our own lack of responsibility. We are reaping our own unconscious behavior. We are reaping our own destructive behavior. Yeah. So now, what does that mean? That means that this represents an opportunity for us individually and collectively to raise our consciousness and look at what we have created and use it as a stepping stone to a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of awareness, much more compassion, much more kindness. And that's what we're seeing in the world, right? More kindness, more compassion, which is beautiful. And I hope that we don't go back to normal. I hope we don't go back to normal.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
I hope we create a new normal. I hope we create a new world, a new way of interacting with each other, where we are more conscious. And when I said to him, this is by divine design, there's no accidents. And so I teach spiritual psychology, right? My expertise is spiritual psychology, spiritual leadership, spiritual genius. And, people say, well, what is that about? I say, well, really, it's about understanding that there's a part of you that's eternal. There's a part of you that's timeless, ageless, boundless. That's your soul. And your soul is manifested in a human body for a short period of time. You are a divine spiritual being having a temporary human experience. And while you're here, your job or your number one role or your number one motivation or your most important thing that you need to be doing is to understand why you are in this body. Why is your soul in this body? What is your life about? What is your true purpose? Your true spiritual purpose for being on earth? It's not to get a job and make money and have a house and get married and have 3 kids and a dog and then get buried, right? That is the smallest part of life. Everything is energetic. And if you study quantum physics and if you're a scientist, then the science, it overlaps with what I've just said, because never before has science been closer to religion or spirituality than it is right now.
Exactly.
Never before than it is right now. The two are merging into one path, and scientists are recognizing this, doctors are recognizing this, and everybody who's walking a spiritual path is recognizing this.
Allan, by the way, the corporate world as well, because when we look at World Economic Forum, or when we look at the statistics of Accenture or statistics of all these consulting firms, and they're doing a vision towards 2035, the number one thing that they will be looking for in an employee will be emotional intelligence, which is compassion, absolutely, which is like being able to have empathy, and all the things that, how Tony says, like, we are not human doings, but we are human beings. Yes. Now is the time where we're going to tap into that being. And thanks to Corona, in a way, let's do an Ho'oponopono, it is actually reminding us who we are. And yes, at these times of crisis, they said that a character is not built, but a character is revealed. Yes. In a way, no new leaders are going to born out of this. just like the uncertainty that you had in your life in war and in London and in your life, you found certainty and have faith within you. Leaders are going to find faith within themselves now, because now they're diving into a new world, which is a digital leadership world.
Yes.
That they don't know it's going to create itself. No one knows what's going to happen. So we are tapping into a new realm. We have already. Now we're going to build tribes on that digital world. And we're going to, in a way, move from egocentric businesses into ecocentric businesses.
Yes.
Because with COVID-19, we saw how much bad we are doing to the world. Like the planes stopped, now we can breathe. Now there's this fresh air out there,
Absolutely. The earth is breathing like it never breathed for a long time.
Yes.
The waters are clearer. The animals are having fun. It's just so beautiful what's happening.
I think there must be a national COVID-19 day where everything stops, no planes, nothing.
I think we should make it for a month. COVID-19 month, the whole month we've shut down.
That's even better.
We've been shut down for 3 months, and it's been fun. Well,
yes.
Actually, let me rephrase that. It's not fun for everybody. I know people are struggling. Some people are really struggling. In South Africa, people are starving. They're actually starving, and so it's really tough for a lot of people. So I don't want to be, I don't want to be flippant or obnoxious, but I really understand there's a lot of people in a lot of pain. But at the same time,
so I want to combine everything that you have so far said. We have 20 minutes and I want to get more gold out of you. So we talked about finding certainty at times of uncertainty. We have also talked about your mindset, like the power questions, positive questions. In a way, these are all called agile leadership. When we go into a corporate world, when they ask us to teach agile leadership, this is exactly what we tell them. We start with the mindset first, and then we tap into the emotions. Then when you start controlling your mind and your emotions, it becomes your habit. So it gets in your body, and then you start leading your teams with how you behave rather than the words. And agile leadership is exactly what you shared. The positive questions that you must ask to yourself, but first doing your priming or find your soul purpose. And also right now, most of the companies are inviting us to give trainings on life purpose, on ikigai. So we tell them about like business mastery that Tony has built, because in business mastery, Tony teaches about these values and Barrett system and everything. So
absolutely.
We are actually waking up to what we must have woken up in the past.
Yes. Well, it gives us an opportunity. It's giving us an opportunity to really look inside and see who we really are. People have paused, and they get time to really get to know themselves, and reflect, possibly learn new disciplines, learn new things, read books, etc., study new things. But like you say, you've got to have it's and a lot of companies this has been around for a while now, but I think it'll be even more important going forward, is encouraging staff members to really meditate, find time in their day to be quiet time, no distractions, stay off the screen, put the phone down, digital detox, and just tap inside. You said we're human beings, but really we are spiritual beings being human, and we're being human for a short while. So the biggest part of us is not visible to the eye, so we get caught up, stuck in the ego self or the false self. And we are defined by what we own, or defined by what we achieve, or defined by how many people follow us on Instagram, or defined by how much money we have in the bank, or what kind of labels we wear, etc., or what our position is at work, what kind of job role we have or vocation we have. These are all definitions of the false self, the ego self, which is why a lot of people are in pain. A lot of people are dysfunctional. A lot of people are suffering because they are defined by the false self. And so we need to encourage people to understand who they really are.
Very true. And at the same time, I think this time is very important for us to share a little bit of hope. So looking back in history, we always came out of these pandemic times. We always found a way. Humanity always finds a way. There's always a Noah's Ark. So there's always a way. And thinking and looking back, and we were talking about business mastery and also Tony Robbins back in 2007 and 8 when there was this big crisis in America. Remember that time when banks were going down and insurance companies?
Very, very clearly.
Right. That was the first time Tony came out with this idea that let's help these businesses. It's just the businesses are aching. Let's find a way to build a system, build a network that we could support each other. And it's very interesting. I don't know if you remember, but at the second business master that he was doing, he actually invited Tony Sage. I can't pronounce his name much. The founder of Zappos, actually, the guy who purchased it later on, right? And
Tony Shi.
Yeah, I can't say that.
You don't pronounce the H. You just say she.
She. Okay, perfect. And then Tony invited us to his warehouse. And he gave us these books, and we're talking about this guy who's creating like billions selling shoes. And I'm thinking, how the heck did online? And we're talking about an era that not much things were digitalized as now.
Yeah.
So this is 2008 and 9. He invited us to his warehouse, and he's showing us around. I'm looking, and then he hands me a book, and he says, "We're not selling shoes, you know." And I'm looking at him like, what? And then he goes like, we're actually delivering happiness. I said, wow, what a vision. And he said, at times of crisis, the best that you can do in your business is to build a culture. I really thought about that. He said, this is not time to go big. This is not time to go invest out, but to go within in your business and invest into a business culture. And I'm assuming like this COVID-19 is going to create new business cultures like corporate wellness. Now people are going to start looking into, just like you said, how can we meditate at work? How can we keep our immune system up at work? Because Tony and Zappos, when they started in that warehouse, the second best thing that they did, they brought in a coach. So they started to work with a coach in a company. And this was like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Right now, we have a lot of coaches in the businesses, but the things that you're saying, the holistic part is now going to be integrated into business, into government, into everything.
Absolutely. 10 years ago, if you mentioned spirituality in a business environment, they would have laughed you out of the room. But now, I talk about it all the time, in a business environment, and when you show the science behind it and the benefits on the human nervous system and the benefits on the ability to perform better, to think better, to have clarity, to be more creative, to be more innovative, then the benefits speak for themselves. And more and more people are realizing now that you have to go within to create an external reality that you really are inspired by, or that really is something that, you can be proud of, that makes a difference and serves the marketplace, in a very powerful way.
Yes. This is absolutely an amazing transformation process that we're going through. I actually call this COVID-19 the biggest personal growth seminar ever.
Beautiful. Yeah, for sure. And because it's people forget, and I've been reminding people a lot. It's not the virus that's creating problems for people. It's what they make it mean. It's their perception of it. It's what they tell themselves about it. It's the meaning that they give it. It's the conversation they have about it inside their own head. Because the virus is just like anything else. It's bringing to the surface what's already inside that's still out of alignment. That is not yet healed, or that is not conscious. Or is not resolved. So it could be. If it's not the virus, it's something else, it's, all of these things just act as triggers, they're triggers to bring us our attention to what is still inside of us that's preventing us from being authentic and powerful and fully self-expressed, and creative,
Oh, talking about creativity, Allan, here's my question to you, and also talking about these big events. You and I and some of our friends were in this big seminar business, which we gather like 13,000 people together to help them to manage.
I can't wait.
And walk on
fire. I can't wait to jump around with 20,000 people. I can't wait to hug people.
Right? Yeah. After COVID-19, and I just heard that Excel London has been, transformed into a hospital. So things are changing, and we're talking about big numbers here. We're talking about like $20 million and stuff per year, what like is not perceived, but as in reality that this sector cannot create right now, just like any other sector.
Or the events industry?
Yes.
Well, it's hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yes, like I was just mentioning one of them.
Yeah.
So being creative at this time of pandemic is the most important and most crucial thing. When is our next event? We're looking into October, right? Like for a big
October,
event.
yeah.
But we're still
hold thumbs, October, please.
Yes. What were the dates? 21st,
22nd, 23rd, 24th.
Yes, we really want to go there, walk on fire and kill all the viruses out there, but we'll see. We'll stay on hold. But until then, a lot of people gathered and created 9-month strategies, because it's not, yes, spirituality number one, 80% is psychology. I absolutely agree with you. And then the 20% would be creating strategies for 9 months and 12 months. And one of the things that, like in our industry, coaching, speaking, and also event management, they put everything online. Thank God we were prepared for these days, because Tony told us the winter is coming, remember?
Yes.
He's been prepared.
Winter is always coming.
Yes, winter, yeah.
At some point, even after the summer and the spring, winter coming again. It comes every year.
Yeah, and thank God he opened this digital world to us like 15 years ago. He brought in all these bloggers and internet marketers, and he showed us how he does it. So we were prepared. Maybe as plus to our psychology and our faith, plus we were prepared for these days. Maybe that's why we can keep calm. Maybe that's why people are coming to us at the moment. So just like you said, being very creative at this time, taking things online would be something that we can tell our listeners to do, right? As an action step. 2, absolutely come to Tony Robbins events. You get to know what's going to happen in the future. What else?
Yeah, he always introduces us to the smartest people in business.
Right? So the second thing would be maybe not only digitally, but also in our offline lives, business and personal, network is the second thing that we must focus on right after these crises. Is that right? What would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the first thing is like find your faith within, and then create a strategic plan, book something after COVID-19. It could be a personal growth event or anything that they could look forward to. So that would be a compelling future for them. Or it could even be a business strategies, like they can book you and then help to create like strategies, because you are coaching businesses, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to say a little bit about, having some kind of daily routine and the importance of visualization. What COVID-19 has brought to everybody's mind, what has made people conscious of the fact that health is so important. Because if you look at the majority of people who have lost their lives to the coronavirus, it's because they had pre-existing ailments, pre-existing conditions, either cancer or heart disease or diabetes or overweight. And a lot of those people were over 60 years of age. And so what happens is, what most people do, you and I both know this, Renee knows this too, anybody that is in the game of helping people to have a better experience of life or create a better experience of life knows that health is the most important thing. But the problem with most people is they neglect their health until they're older, and they think they can buy their health back later. Right? But you cannot buy your health back, because it's too late, because the damage is already done. And that damage is often being done over a long period of time. Cancer doesn't just show up suddenly like that. Cancer's been manifesting slowly for a long period of time, and then suddenly it's now visible, in the form of a tumor or a large lump on your neck. But it's been building over a period of time, because that's a lack of consciousness, a lack of health. So what I say to people is that you must exercise every day, at least half an hour. Even if you just walk, you must do breathing every day. Every morning I do the same thing every morning. I'm 53 years young. I'm 54 years young in December. I've got more energy. I have more energy now than I had at 32 years of age when I did my first UPW with Tony in Cardiff, Wales. I was 32 then. I looked unhealthy because I was full of toxins. I was taking drugs. I was drinking. I was smoking. I was angry. I was unhappy. I wasn't working out. I've always been somebody who's valued health and exercise and sport. But at that period of my life, for 15 years, I didn't work out. And I was just taking a lot of drugs, and I had less energy at 32 than I have now. And so every single day, you know, I meditate twice a day. In the morning, I exercise every morning. I have a cold shower every morning. I do breathing every morning. First thing I do when I wake up, I say, good morning. Thank you for this new day. I'm so grateful for a new day, because I know that many people did not wake up today. Many people did not wake up today. I woke up. That gives me a very good reason to say thank you for the new day. And then I do breathing. I do breathing for half an hour. Conscious, deep breathing. Because breath is very important. In fact, the word psyche, which is a short word for psychology, psyche is the internal world of your mind. Psyche was originally psyche from Greek. Okay. And psyche meant the study of life, breath, and soul. That was the original meaning of psyche. It only became psyche in the mid-1600s, and then it became psychology, which is a scientific study of the mind related to human behavior. So no more is it about the study of life, breath, and soul. People don't realize they don't even breathe properly. And one of the biggest problems for the human body is a lack of oxygen. With a lack of oxygen, you cannot be healthy and well. So you must breathe properly. You need to exercise at least half an hour every single day. You need to drink 3 liters of water minimum per day. Minimum 3 liters a day. You need to cut out anything that creates acid in your body, anything that creates toxins. And then you need to pay attention to what you talk about all day long in your head. Pay attention and be conscious. And anytime you catch yourself saying something negative, or anything that catch yourself saying something mean to yourself, giving yourself a hard time, or in your own head judging someone else or complaining about something, stop in that moment and say, that's not me anymore. I don't do that anymore. And replace it with something positive. Because even if you have a negative thought, it has an impact on your nervous system. And people don't understand. Because even thinking something negative has an electrical charge that affects your nervous system. If you do that over the course of a lifetime, you're going to get cancer. If you have resentment, and you have resentment suppressed in your nervous system, and you're angry with someone that hurt you 20 years ago and you haven't let go of it, you're going to get cancer. You're going to die early. So pay attention to what's going on inside your body, inside your head, and start to release that stuff. Be healthy. Healthy mind, healthy body, healthy soul. Most important. Meditate every day. What is meditation? Meditation means you get underneath the noise in your mind, so you can get into your soul, into your heart, where you can feel love, where you can feel peace, where you can feel silence, where in the silence is the most profound answers. You won't get answers from your head, because your head is talking shit all day long, 24 hours a day, 60 to 90,000 thoughts. The same thoughts that went through your head yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. Because all thought is habit. It's a habit. It's a pattern. There is no such thing as a thought leader. I don't like that term. When people say I'm a thought leader, yeah. I say, what do you mean a thought leader? You haven't had a new thought since you were born, right? It's the same thing all day long. You cannot have an original thought unless you are zen. Unless you are zen. When zen, that means being in the flow. That means being tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and connected to God all the time. Then you can have a new original thought. But until you get to that place, you're not having any original thought. You're having the same shit thoughts that you had yesterday. So now pay attention to what's going on between your ears. Start listening. When you start listening to what you're saying to yourself inside your head, it will shock you. Because you say things to yourself that you would never say to your best friend, because they would knock you out if you said it to them. So pay attention. Exercise. Meditate. Breathe.
Or maybe even journal. Take that out of your system.
Exactly. Journal. Be grateful every day. Find things to be grateful for and really feel it. Don't just say it. Feel it, because emotion is important. Now, the last thing I want to say, visualize. Visualize. If you don't know how to visualize, it's easy to do it. You get a picture and you look at the picture and you close your eyes. You look at the picture, you close your eyes. You look at the picture, you close your eyes. You do it faster and faster and faster and faster. Then you close your eyes, you can see the picture in your mind, right? Now, the reason most people can't visualize is because their creative mind has been shut down by the logical mind, by education, by school, by college, by academics, by other people's opinions, by all kinds of things. So their visualization muscle is sleeping. but it's still there. It's waiting for you to wake it up. So wake up your visualization muscle and visualize your best life. Visualize things that make you happy. See them every night as you fall asleep. Listen to something at night as you fall asleep that it can program your unconscious. Listen to it all night. I've been doing this for 32 years, listening to things every single night without fail. I cannot go to sleep unless I'm listening to something, because I think that something is missing and I want to program my unconscious. When you wake up in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you say thank you. Then you close your eyes and you imagine a beautiful picture in the screen of your mind, a beautiful day. You see yourself laughing. You step into the picture. Visualize, visualize, visualize. This is the most powerful muscle that was given to the human being, is the creative mind. You can visualize anything you want to visualize. You breathe life into it. You breathe emotion into it. You feel what it feels like to be living that picture in your mind, like the real right now in the moment. You create the energy, and then you send the energy out to the universe, and you send the intention out from the third eye, and then you let go of any attachment. You become, it's connected to everything, attached to nothing. This is the secret of the universe.
Wow, the secrets. This is amazing, amazing, amazing. I love it. Like everyone is cheering. I can see their videos. Allan, that was really in the flow. And also, what you're saying, it's also from the future. Because right now, what they're working on is with these computers in Japan. 2 years ago, you sit in front of a computer, you think of an apple, and an apple forms on the computer. So just like you said, this is the time to start practicing those nerves, because in the future, I was invited to a tech conference, but a small one, 12 people. They're even talking about we're not going to use our hands. You know, they're thinking like we're going to have these chips inside and we're going to focus, and then that's how we're going to move and shape things. So we'd better start doing it now. This would be the best time to start doing it.
Yeah.
Also,
and you know, just one more thing about that is that it's very important to practice visualizing what you want, because if you are not practicing conscious visualization, and most people are not, then they don't realize that most people don't realize they're practicing unconscious visualization. They are unconsciously thinking of things going wrong without even knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah.
So whenever you think about something going wrong, all you're doing is you putting that energy out to the universe, and your vibration is very low.
Yes.
When your vibration is low, your frequency is low, and then you're attracting at a low frequency. You need to raise your frequency, and you do that by visualizing things that you love, things that make you excited, things that make you inspired, and then you bring love to the experience. You raise your vibration.
Very and always positive, right?
Always positive, always optimistic.
There is this Russian professor, I forgot his name. When I was doing an event in Istanbul, he joined us through Skype, and then he shared something that they're doing in Russia. He said, Yeliz, in the future, if you think something negative, like, oh, I don't want that light, let's say the light is on in your room, the lights are going to go off. So in the future, you will have no luxury to think negative, because in our brains, we will be installing chips, which we will be controlling the room, temperature, the lights, and everything. So we are there. We're already in that digital world. We're already in the future. And since so far in the ancient teaching, spirituality or religion or personal growth, what we have always said, like think positive, have an intention. Now it's also in the technology. So going back to where we started, just like you said, spirituality and technology is connecting, it's uniting. I think I'm kind of excited to be able to see this time of era, you know, like we are shifting to
a great time to be alive.
Absolutely. And everyone is waking up to their purposes, not only individually, but in corporate as well as governmental. As they're going into the digitalization of the world, they're waking up to their purposes, and everyone started to ask, why am I here? You know, why am I on this world? What's my purpose? What are my values? What are my virtues? Who am I? So these are great questions, and we all are here to serve. Thank you very much for coming on board. Thank you very
Thank you,
much
man.
for sharing your light, your life purpose, your gift. Um,
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us a couple of more things and then we'll say bye. What would you like to end our meeting with?
I'll end it with what I always ended with, is just to remind people that nothing is ever in the way, everything is always on the way. So, whenever you encounter an obstacle, it's very easy for the mind to focus on the obstacle, because the obstacle is what the eyes see, and what we see, we then give a meaning to that, we give a distinction to that, we give a language to that, we describe it to ourselves. And if we see the obstacle, then the mind gets tricked by the fact there is no way around the obstacle, and we forget that. But every obstacle is a step to a higher level of experience, to a higher level of awareness, to a better view, right? So when you stand on an obstacle, you never know what you can see on the other side. And so it's really about recognizing that everything that we think is in the way is really on the way.
Beautiful. This is beautiful. And Allan, also we have leaders that are going to be the digital leaders pretty soon. And the things that you have shared will be the most important that they must get into their head and also into their leadership styles. Because in the future, most of the things will be, and still at the moment too, will be done by artificial intelligence and everything. So staying healthy, focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. And as a third action step, anything that you would like to recommend our listeners and watchers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said like 3 steps there, because when, I've been saying people the same thing, if there's only 3 things that you do, that you are consciously doing, or you're paying attention to, or giving your energy. First one is focus. So you must focus on what you want, like you said, and you must focus in the direction you want to go. And you must be you must have laser type focus, right? And focus means follow one course until successful. FOCUS. Focus. Follow one course until successful. Very few people give up because their focus is not laser like, and they keep focusing on the obstacles without focusing on where they want to be. So focus, make your focus powerful. Focus on what you want. And exercise focus. You can exercise focus. You can make it stronger. Your focus can better and better and better. Second thing, you must have strategies, like you say. Find strategies that work. Follow people with good strategies. Find a good coach. Find a good mentor. Tony Robbins is one of the best, if not the best. And find someone where you can apply their strategies. These days, strategies are available for free. You can get them on YouTube, you get them on Facebook, you get them on Instagram, you get them on books, you get them in a library, you can get them anywhere, right? There's so many free strategies available. So find some strategies that you want to use to create the life that you want using powerful focus. And third thing, very important, grace, or spirit or faith, a connection with your creator. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I don't believe in religion. I think religion is dangerous. I think religion divides people. But I believe that everything is energy and energy is everything. That means we are all the same thing. Molecules, atoms, and electrons all moving at speed. So we are spiritual beings, and we are having a temporary human experience. And that means that if you do not recognize that something much bigger than you is working through you, then you will be tricked by your ego into believing that you can do it on your own. And ego means edging God out. So you cannot do anything on your own. You are doing everything by the grace of this universe, the grace of this magical infinite intelligence that permeates everything. And it's in you too. So make peace with it, make friends with it, and form a relationship with your higher self, your authentic self, your God self. Abraham Maslow talked about self-actualizing people. Yes. A self-actualizing person recognizes that the highest part of them is God in action. So make peace with that, come to terms with that, and embrace that part of yourself, because you cannot live your life without it. And your ego might trick you into believing you can, but it's impossible. And until you do that, you'll never really have a truly powerful experience of who you can really be in this earth.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if our viewers would like to reach you, how can they reach you, and how can they get coaching from you, or to a Tony Robbins event if they would like to book through you? What can they do? Through your website?
Well, they can find me on Facebook. You and I are connected on Facebook, so they'll find me on your Facebook, and they've got my name now. You mentioned my private group. I've got a private group called The Awakened Soul. Every morning, 11 a.m., I do a live meditation. I've been doing it for the last 7 weeks now, since very soon after the lockdown started. I've been doing a live guided meditation every day at 11 a.m. in London time. If you can't watch the live meditation, you can watch the replays, and it's beautiful. You'll love it. There's nearly 1,700 people there now. We all meditate together. It's beautiful. Not everyone does it live together because some people are working, but you can watch the replays. You can find me there on Facebook, find me on Instagram. I have a website. You can just type my name, Allan Kleynhans. You can find me wherever you want to find me. I'm not very active on LinkedIn. I'm not very active I don't do Twitter, but Instagram, Facebook. I'm happy to connect with people. They can send me messages. I answer all my own messages, me personally. I don't have a robot. I don't have an assistant who answers my messages. I do it myself personally.
Because we are human beings. We love the human touch. So am I.
I think it's respectful. I think it's respectful to answer your own messages, not get someone else to do it or a robot.
And also, I think we are lucky because we're doing what we love to do. And for that, thanks to our mentors and coaches and consultants, and thanks to our soul that took us to those personal growth events.
Yes.
We everyone saying thank you, and also we look forward to seeing you in the next live event, wherever that's going to be, whenever that's going to be. But before then, that on 20th of May, so I'm sure you know it, but to our listeners, there's going to be the world's biggest virtual success seminar, and I'm going to be sending them a link so that they can go online, which is going to be free. It's like all these names that Allan mentioned, they're going to be there live, and it's going to be worldwide network that you will be able to tap into. And hopefully at a live event, we're going to see each other, and we're going to give a big high five and also big hugs. Allan?
I look forward to seeing you in person, Elise, and I look forward to seeing you too, Renee. It's been a long time. Renee, are you in Australia?
He got locked down in Australia, yes.
Yeah, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're in Australia.
Sure.
Yeah, I was traveling for Success Resources in Sydney for Michael Lane and Michael Burnett. We're going to do some previews for Tony, and arrived on the 29th of February. I had to fly back on the 31st of March, but then thanks to our dear friend Corona, I'm still here.
Wow.
It's 10 past 2 in the morning here. So yeah.
Where are you staying?
Staying with my partner and her parents.
Okay, cool, man. Well, listen,
yeah.
all the best, brother. I love you lots, my man. Miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too, man.
It's
good to see you. Good to hear you.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
And Allan, we're gonna be hosting Renee pretty soon too, so we will get to see more of him.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Allan. Sorry?
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, we're delighted to host you. It was amazing. Thank you very much for the soul. Thank you very much for the heart. Everything you shared really did touch, because I can feel that it's coming through you. So I'm sure all the listeners are very happy. I'll be catching up with them as well. We look forward to seeing you online or offline again.
Awesome. Love you lots. Stay blessed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.